Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're continuing our series on how to train a Friesian with our youngster here, Orion, who's been with us a couple of months. So we saw in our last video, we showed you from the very beginnings of lunging this horse to the beginnings of mounted work. So we're continuing with that. So we see now that he's become quite used to having a bit in his mouth, and we've started him in side rein, so he's beginning to stretch into this. Of course, this is just the beginning of lunging here. You'll see him stretch down and become more consistent here as time goes on. So very typical for him to look up and down a little bit as we start them out as young horses. But notice the side reins are very long and just long enough that he can just stretch into them. So we're just beginning to ask for a little bit of contact with the bridle here. But look how beautifully he's already stretching. Once again, remember, this horse has only been in training for a couple of months. But I wanted to show you all how easy it is to work horses that have not been damaged by bad training and how quickly they come along. You see with this one, from totally green to what you see here, has only taken a couple of months. And as I showed you in the first video, how he just stretched almost within a few minutes of lunging him correctly. The horse began to stretch, even back with only just a halter on him as we started. But now he's carrying the bit very well. You can see how, if you take a look closely, when he comes around there, you'll see that as we go on here, the mouth is staying quite closed. We're already seeing a nice line of foam happening through his mouth there, but not over so. And how beautifully he's stretching into the contact and how rhythmic he's becoming. Once again, this was a very big horse, but you see how light he's starting to move because he's working over his back. When we started him, he was just like most Friesians that we see, very hollow, hind legs kind of falling out behind, and looked very clunky and heavy. So you see already in just this couple of months' time, he's starting to look quite light on his feet for a horse of this size. And still just finding his way there into stabilizing with the bridle, but he's certainly not reacting overly to anything. How beautifully he's stretching down here. That's what we're looking for, getting him all the way down. Once again, so many people who have these Friesians, they think that they're supposed to have their heads way up in the air, which is just not the case at all. And of course, that's a little bit of a trick question of how to train a Friesian, because the answer to that question is we train them just like we train any other horses. Of course, there's always certain differences in body styles and mental makeup, that sort of thing that goes into training horses. But our goal with all of them is the exact same thing, getting them to stretch and work over their top line so that they can carry weight without damaging themselves. And of course be a lot safer to ride and more fun. Now look how beautifully he's starting to swing. And while he still comes up and down a little bit here, you can see that mostly he's pretty consistent. That's absolutely beautiful. You can see him swinging. Look at the even diagonal pairs as he trots. Go on YouTube and look at almost any Friesian that you'll see on there, and you'll see that most of them, the hind legs are falling out behind. So just because a horse is built with its neck up in the air doesn't mean we need to train them that way. In fact, quite the opposite. You know, the thing of breeding horses where they have these huge necks that come straight up out of the shoulders, you know, is a way of making it easier to make them look like something that they're not, which is a correctly trained horse. And of course, we're seeing that in warm bloods all the time now. We're seeing horses that are so well bred. I mean, they literally almost look like they're trained, you know, when they're 3 or 4 years old. They develop a nice uphill conformation and great back ends and great hock movement. Everything that we'd like, but unfortunately, if we don't train them correctly, like you see us doing with this one, all that movement of these modern horses just ends up breaking them down even faster. So he was really good in both directions here today. Now that she's changed direction, just gives him a moment to stretch back into it in the walk before we go into the trot work. But once again, look how easily he's accepting all this. He's not dragging us around the arena anymore, which he tried to do in the very beginning. And once again, this was a very, very big, very heavy, very powerful horse, who, if we didn't train correctly, would be quite difficult. Good stretch there, exactly what we're looking for. And notice in both directions he's a little inconsistent at first. He wants to come up as all young horses do. And all Amber does is just send him forward a little bit. just as you should do when you ride. Of course, horses are always trying to look at things. Just because they're trying to look at things doesn't necessarily mean that they're afraid of them. It's just a natural course of what the animal would do if something distracts it. So our goal in training is to overcome that desire and just get them moving and focused into the training, stretching into the contact, and just sending them forward. So whenever the horse spooks or acts like it's bothered by something, we just ignore it and just send the horse right on, act like nothing had happened. And of course, a lot of that has to do with how we react to the horses. If we react in a frightened manner to what they're doing, then they're going to react even more so. So once again, why it's so important that riders reach this stage. There can never be any frustration or anger in your mind when you're working horses. If there is, or fear, they will pick up on it instantly. As long as you're a confident person, you're asking, and of course that confidence comes from knowing what you're doing. And once you know what you're doing, in the sense that, building on a good foundation, you just simply know that if anything does go wrong, you simply go take a step backwards rather than trying to get in a fight with the horse or push it through a wall that's physically impossible at the time. So once again, look how beautifully he's stretching and how consistent that is. Look how long he is to the neck. And now you can see how he's already starting to develop a little bounce. That is, his hind legs are coming under him enough now that he's beginning to develop a little thrust already and lift his front end off the ground. It's all excellent. And once again, remember, this is only a couple of months of work with this horse from totally green. He's just a youngster. But how quickly he's already accepting contact and stretching into that contact. And already with just the little time that we've spent, look how quickly he gets in this frame. So we're really only talking about a matter of 10 minutes on the side, even less, to get him exactly where we want him to be. And that's what it should be taking. So always remember, if your lunging work is going well, it should be taking less time every day, to the point that it takes about 10 minutes on a side, and that's about it. In other words, they should be stretching into the contact pretty quick from when you start if you've done this right. So again, what you're seeing here is 2 months of work. So you can see in that 2 months from totally green, this is our horse is already accepting contact with the bridle, already stretching into it, moving well over his top line, already developing. And once again, it didn't take hours every day. I always ask people to take a look at, think about how racehorses, I don't know if any of you have ever trained racehorses or been around the training of racehorses, but you'll find that you think about how fit a racehorse is. It only actually exercises for 15 or 20 minutes a day at the outside. But the good people at the track know just what the good people riding, training under saddle horses or any kind of horse, that we have to get them working over their backs to preserve soundness and strength. And once we get that, we can do most other things. So once again, it doesn't matter what you're doing, any kind of sporting activity with a horse where you want the horse to be able to compete at the highest levels of physical competition. It's so important that that physical training be correct, that you don't break the horse down in the process of getting there. So many dressage horses today, sadly, we think about, racehorses breaking down, but dressage horses are doing the same things these days at about the same alarming rate. And that's what always happens when you try to train horses too quickly or don't understand how they physically function. So this was all very good work today. You can see how clearly he's accepted the contact with the bridle there. So now we're going to continue our mounted work. And in today's work, what we're going to do is I'm going to have Amber begin to take over control from me. So we've had her on his back maybe half a dozen times, something like that, just walking in hand, which is what you should do. She always takes this moment in the beginning just to be sure he's not going to be overreactive when she steps up on the saddle. And once she gets in the saddle, she's going to walk along with me. But the difference today is that I'm beginning to ask Amber to take over a little bit of control. So up to now, it's been me just doing everything from the ground. And once again, that's why it's so important that you have a ground person, that you establish this work in hand, the lunging, so the person from the ground, the horse has a lot of respect for. So at the beginning, it's me just walking the horse around till it's calm with somebody on its back. Once you have that, then we must, of course, transfer the control of the ground person to the control of the person on top. So that's what we're doing today, is I'm simply asking her to just ask the horse to move on with her legs after we stop, and I'm letting her stop the horse by just giving and taking with the reins a little bit. So she's taking over control. So that's the next stage in this process. And once again, you want to never hurry these early stages. Too many people are just, I've seen so many people go off of horses that they've literally just taught them to lunge and they're throwing somebody on them the first day they taught them to lunge, and then something goes wrong and the person goes off, and now we have a huge problem. So if you'll just take a little bit of time in this early work of training, to be sure that nothing goes wrong, then you'll have a horse that you can trust. So once again, see how I have her giving and taking a little bit, so she's taking over. She's of course using voice commands, which you can't tell from here, but she's also using her voice commands instead of me. So she's basically doing everything here. I'm just still with her, walking along to give the horse the confidence that it needs to do this without difficulty. But I'm having her take over more control. So every time we move on, for the first time now, I'm asking the horse to move ahead of her legs. Or I'm not letting her do the asking instead of me. But you see, I am there close enough. If something went wrong, I can control the horse. So once again, now that was really nice. That time the horse didn't resist at all. Just came to a nice halt for her. And then we walk on again. So it's so important, many horses, especially of the thoroughbred type, the first time you get on them, very often they don't do anything when you first get on. It's later down the road, a few days, once they get used to having someone on their back. That's why it's so important to just take your time with this step and spend quite a few days just walking with the weight on the horse's back with someone alongside the horse, just to give it the confidence. Much as in the old days we used to pony horses, out. But that's a dangerous thing to do in an area where, if you don't have an area where you're completely away from automobiles and that sort of thing, ponying horses is just not a very safe thing to do in traffic, so to speak. So not many people do it these days. So once again, just walking on. Now I'm beginning to ask her to just ask a little more with her legs to bring the horse forward. So what we're going to attempt to do today is get the horse to stretch with her on top, which you'll see he achieves quite nicely here in a few moments. Once again, that's all her. You see, I'm just walking along with her. She's taking over control. She asks the horse to stop. And then she'll ask him to walk on again. Now, I would do a few days more of this before I actually begin to let her out on the lunge line. So in this way, we keep the horse moving forward without taking the chance of letting something go wrong. It's like when we jump horses. Most young horses will jump quite big fences, but if they have a mistake, if they make a mistake and get hurt, then they'll never want to jump again. So see how beautifully he stretched into the contact there? Just like that. So that's all we're looking for him to do today, and she's going to immediately dismount. So that was his first stretch, mounted. So again, this is Will Faerber with my associate trainer, Amber Matusik, training the horse Orion. Hope that helps. We'll see you next time.